Sister mocked my apartment. So tiny! You live like a rat, she said. I said. Cool, then you don't need the free rent anymore. And that same night she texted me 14 times. It's funny how some moments etch themselves into your memory with perfect clarity, not because they're beautiful, but because they break something inside you. So when my sister Melanie burst out laughing and said, "Oh my God, this place is so tiny! You live like a rat!" It didn't feel like a joke. Not to me. Not after everything I'd done. We were standing in the middle of my studio apartment. A clean, modest little place I'd worked years to afford. White walls, hardwood floors, the faint hum of the city outside my window. A small desk with my gaming rig. A tea kettle on the stove. String lights draped above my bed like stars I'd earned. But none of that mattered to Melanie. She stood there in her expensive boots, tossing her hair and scanning the space like she was on some kind of bad reality show. My cousins Kyle and Britt were there too, sitting on the futon and glancing at each other like they didn't quite know whether to laugh or cringe. And that was the moment I knew something was about to shift. You see, this place, small as it was, meant everything to me. It was the first home I'd ever had that was mine. No roommates. No crashing on couches. No landlords breathing down my neck. Just me and the quiet, finally. But let me back up a bit. The trouble didn't start with that comment. That was just the moment the curtain dropped. The first signs were subtle. Little things that most people would brush off. A sigh when I asked her to clean up after herself. That look she gave me when I came home with generic groceries. Or how she never once offered to chip in, not for rent, not for food, not even for the extra utilities that shot up the second she moved in. But I let it all slide. Because she was my sister. And she was going through a rough time. Her boyfriend had dumped her. She lost her job at the boutique, something about showing up late too many times. She sounded wrecked when she called me. "Please, Rob," she said, voice cracking. "I have nowhere else to go." So I said yes. No lease, no rules. Just kindness. I cleared space in the closet. Gave her the bed and I slept on the futon. Bought extra groceries. Bit my tongue when she left dishes in the sink. I figured she'd bounce back in a few weeks. That was 3 months ago. And now she was standing in my home, the same home that had taken me years of juggling community college, night shifts, and warehouse work to afford, and she called it a rat's nest. That's when I smiled. Not out of politeness. Not out of embarrassment. No. I smiled because something clicked into place. I realized right then and there, Melanie had never seen what this place was. She'd only seen what it wasn't. And I was done letting her stay blind to it. The worst part wasn't even what she said, it was how she said it. Like she was entertaining a crowd. "Seriously, Robbie," Melanie went on, still laughing. "Where do you even eat? On your lap like a squirrel?" She looked around and clapped her hands together like she was hosting a tour. "No dining table. One window. And is that a fold-up chair?" Kyle gave an awkward chuckle, but Britt elbowed him gently and whispered something under her breath. He shut up quick. I just stood there, watching Melanie perform. She didn't realize the words she was tossing out like confetti were cutting deep. That this tiny apartment, with its one window and thrifted furniture, wasn't just a place, it was a symbol. Of finally getting out from under crushing debt. Of saying no to bosses who screamed and yes to online classes that ate my nights. Of building a life that didn't rely on anyone but me. But Melanie? She wasn't interested in any of that. She was used to getting rescued. Our parents always bailed her out. When she maxed out credit cards, Dad refinanced. When she dropped out of college after a semester, Mom blamed the professors. And when her last 3 relationships blew up, she moved from boyfriend to boyfriend like stepping stones, until they all got tired of footing her bills. And then she came to me. To be honest, I didn't think twice when she called crying. I told her, "Come over. Stay as long as you need." But I should have known better. Because the signs had been there since week 1. Like the time she, accidentally, used my debit card to order Thai takeout, for her and her friends. Or when I came home to find her wearing my hoodie, lounging on my futon, feet on my desk, scrolling through Instagram with a half-eaten cupcake on my keyboard. She never cleaned. Never asked if I was okay. Never even thanked me. But I told myself she was just hurting. Until tonight. Tonight she stood in the middle of my living room and humiliated me in front of people I cared about. And when she laughed and said, "How do you even date with a setup like this?" I saw Kyle's expression change. That's when I realized I wasn't the only one who thought this had gone too far. Melanie caught the silence and paused. She looked at my face, searching for a reaction. She wasn't expecting what she found. I took a step forward, slow, calm. "Cool," I said. My voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. "Then you don't need the free rent anymore." Her smile faltered. "What?" "You can pack your stuff," I said, still steady. "You've got 3 days." And just like that, the room flipped. Melanie blinked, like she was trying to reset reality. As if maybe I'd misspoken. "You're kicking me out?" she said, her voice losing that cocky edge. "Over a joke?" I didn't flinch. I didn't laugh. I didn't even blink. "It wasn't a joke," I said. "You meant every word. And I heard you." Kyle stood up awkwardly. "Hey man, we didn't mean to." "You're good," I cut in. "You didn't say anything. This isn't about you." Melanie looked around the room like someone had moved the ground beneath her. For a moment she seemed almost small. Like the punchline had backfired. I didn't need to raise my voice. I didn't have to prove I was serious. The calm was louder than any shouting could have been. She didn't say another word that night. Just gathered her things in a huff and slammed the door to the bathroom, pretending to have some urgent reason not to be in the room anymore. Kyle and Britt, bless them, stayed for 5 more minutes, offering up those polite, murmured goodbyes you give when someone's had a public meltdown and you don't know how to make it less awkward. When the door finally closed behind them, the quiet in the apartment was like a warm blanket. I cleaned up the kitchen, wiped down the counters, lit a cinnamon candle I only used when I really needed peace. And I sat on the futon, staring at the little tea kettle starting to hiss on the stove. That's when it started. Buzz. One text. "Melanie. Okay, wow. You're really doing this? After everything I've been through?" Then a second. Then a third. By midnight, it was 14 messages. Each one more erratic than the last. "I didn't mean it like that. You know I'm stressed, right? Are you seriously abandoning me like everyone else? This is low, even for you." Some were apologies wrapped in guilt trips. Others were full-on tantrums. One had a crying emoji followed by a screenshot of a text from her ex, as if that was my responsibility now, too. I didn't answer a single one. I muted her number and tossed my phone on the bed. And for the first time in 3 months, I slept like a rock. The next morning, the apartment felt different. Lighter. The air wasn't clogged with tension or perfume, or the buzz of someone pacing while talking on speakerphone. The futon was made. My desk was organized. My tea was steeping without anyone asking if I had almond milk. Melanie hadn't come out of the bathroom until long after the cousins left the night before. I half expected her to stomp into the living room again, arms crossed, firing off guilt like a sprinkler, but she stayed silent. I didn't go out of my way to talk to her. She spent most of the day sulking in the room, her phone lighting up with texts I wasn't curious enough to read. Once or twice, I heard her open the fridge and sigh loudly, probably hoping I'd offer to go grocery shopping. I didn't. That night, I cleaned everything, top to bottom. Vacuumed the rug. Wiped the windows. Took out a box of string lights I hadn't used since moving in. I looped them along the curtain rod, soft white against the evening skyline. Then I brewed a mug of green tea, set it beside my keyboard, and sat down at my desk. I looked around my little rat's nest. It was perfect. Quiet. Clean. Mine. And then I had an idea. I snapped a photo, the soft lights glowing against the walls, the cup of tea steaming gently, the cozy hum of my monitor casting a blue tint across the room. It looked like the cover of a "This is Peace" Pinterest board. I posted it online with a simple caption. Turns out this rat's nest is paradise when there's no pest around. Mouse face sparkles. I didn't tag her. I didn't need to. But it didn't take long. A few mutuals liked it. One of our cousins commented, "Looks way better than I remembered eyes." Someone else added, "You always had a vibe, man." Respect. It wasn't revenge. Not really. It was just truth. For once, I wasn't pretending to be the guy who could take a punch without reacting. I wasn't brushing things off or playing the role of the dependable brother. I was just living. And I wanted people to see what it looked like. What peace looked like. Melanie left 2 days later. Not with a bang, like I half expected, but with a weird, wordless scurry. She didn't speak to me that morning. Just gathered her makeup bags, a laundry basket of wrinkled clothes, and the pair of boots she always left by the front door, as if they were decorative. She paused once, hand on the knob, like she wanted to say something, but whatever it was, she swallowed it. And then she was gone. I stood there for a few minutes, just breathing. Not thinking. Just breathing. Then I turned around, sat back at my desk, and smiled. She hadn't slammed the door. That felt like a victory. I could have left the place quiet for a while, lived in solitude, enjoyed my space like a well-earned secret, but the practical part of me started doing math. Rent wasn't cheap, and with her gone, I could use the help. But not just any help. So I posted a listing on a roommate board, nothing fancy, just a few clear photos and a description that said, "Small but peaceful. No drama, no noise, just vibes. Looking for someone clean, respectful, and working towards something." I got over 30 replies. Most were people like me, young, working, exhausted from chaos. But one message stood out. It was from a guy named Darren. Quiet tone. Said he was a medical assistant working swing shifts and just wanted a stable place to sleep, cook, and read. When he came to visit the place, he looked around with wide eyes and said, "You can feel that this is a calm space." He moved in 2 weeks later. Darren was the opposite of Melanie in every way. He took his shoes off at the door. He left handwritten notes if he finished the milk. He asked before inviting anyone over, which happened once, and they stayed for an hour, soft jazz playing in the background. But most importantly, he saw the place the same way I did. One night he made a cup of tea and said, "This apartment may be small, but it feels like it has gravity. Like it keeps the chaos out." I couldn't have said it better. I wasn't just living in a space anymore, I was sharing it, and it felt like a choice, not a compromise. It was about 3 weeks after she left that I heard from our mom. She called while I was folding laundry, and for the first time in forever, I actually hesitated to answer. Not because I was angry, well, maybe a little, but because I didn't want the calm cracked open again. Still, I picked up. "Hey, Mom." "Oh, Robbie. She's home." I didn't have to ask who. She let out a long sigh like she just finished a marathon and said, "She came in with 3 bags and attitude. You'd think we kicked her out." I leaned against the wall. "So she's back with you and Dad?" "For now," Mom said. Then, quieter, "We've already had 2 fights. Your father's making her help with dishes, and she thinks it's child labor." I didn't say anything. Just listened. "She called your place a closet, by the way," Mom added, sounding almost guilty. "Said it was suffocating." I let out a small breath. "It's funny. I've never breathed easier than since she left." That earned me a small, surprised laugh from her. "You really kicked her out?" "She kicked herself out," I said. There was a pause. "I guess I just never thought I'd see the day you put your foot down." I smiled to myself. Neither did I. And then Mom said something I didn't expect. "You were right to do it." That landed harder than I thought it would. Maybe because she'd always babied Melanie. Maybe because I'd always been the quiet one, the helper, the one who didn't make waves. But that call felt like someone finally saw the ripple I'd made, and didn't try to flatten it. That night, I walked into the apartment and saw Darren sitting at the table, legs crossed, reading a dog-eared copy of The Martian. He looked up and nodded, then went back to his book. No drama. No yelling. No tension in the air. I looked around at the soft lights, the clean counter, the single dirty mug in the sink that I'd left there that morning, and smiled. It sounded like such a small thing, but it wasn't. The only dishes in the sink were mine. And I liked that. The group chat was called Fam Bam, an old thread we used to joke around, plan birthdays, and occasionally trade memes. But after that night, it went eerily silent. No one said anything about Melanie's comment at my place. Not Kyle, not Britt, not even cousin Teresa, who once lived, tweeted her breakup in that same chat. I figured maybe they were just trying to stay neutral. Or maybe they didn't know what to say. That changed about a week later. Kyle broke the silence first. Kyle. Yo. Mel's still at your place? I waited. Decided to answer honestly. Me. Nah. I asked her to leave. And just like that, the floodgates opened. Teresa. OMG. Was it because of what she said? Britt. She was so out of line. I felt awkward just being there. Kyle. We weren't sure if it was okay to say anything, but man, that wasn't cool. It kept coming. One by one, the cousins chimed in. Not a single person defended her. Not one. Then Britt sent a screenshot from Melanie's Instagram story. It was a selfie with the caption, "Back at the Parent Trap. Thanks for nothing." Underneath, someone had commented, "You were living rent-free, girl." No. Melanie had deleted it an hour later, but the damage was done. Her whole "I'm the victim" routine wasn't landing like it used to. Later that night, Teresa messaged me privately. Teresa. You know, you handled it like a boss. I would have snapped. You didn't. Respect. I stared at that message longer than I expected. Because honestly, I'd spent years wondering if being the calm one meant being weak. If not reacting made me a doormat. But this time, the quiet was the reaction. And it spoke louder than yelling ever could. There was a moment, maybe the third night after she left, when I sat on the futon and waited to feel something, regret, guilt, doubt. Something. But all I felt was space. Not just physical, though, yeah, that too. The closet door actually closed now. My sneakers weren't mysteriously missing. The single bathroom didn't have someone's half-finished makeup routine occupying every surface. But more than that, it was emotional space. I'd spent so long defaulting to the role of rescuer. The solid brother. The guy who kept the peace, even if it meant burying the parts of myself that wanted to scream. For years I thought that was love. That love was supposed to be quiet sacrifice. But then I started drinking tea at a clean desk under the glow of thrift store string lights, and I realized something. Love doesn't mean letting someone treat your life like a convenience store. I wasn't angry anymore. Not really. Just done. Melanie, for all her charm and her chaos, had never seen this place for what it was. And because of that, she had never really seen me. But now I saw myself clearer than ever. I started sleeping better. Eating slower. I read more. Got back into gaming with my friends, something I'd quietly stopped doing while trying to play emotional landlord. Darren would sometimes come home and say, "Man, this place feels like an exhale." I'd nod, because I knew exactly what he meant. This place, my rat's nest, had become something sacred. Not because it was impressive, but because it was real. It was the first place I'd ever built with my own hands and my own hours. It was small, sure, but it didn't feel like a cage. It felt like freedom. I figured she'd try again. After the 14 messages that night and her silent retreat from my apartment, I thought maybe she'd cool off, regroup, and do what she always did, circle back with some mix of guilt, charm, and just enough self-pity to make me second-guess myself. But she went quiet. For a while. Then, a week and a half later, I got the message. It was around noon. I was halfway through my lunch break at work, scrolling through an article about second-hand monitors, when her name lit up my phone. Melanie. Hey, can we talk? Just that. No emojis. No drama. No caps. I stared at it. Let it sit. Part of me expected more to come, like before. The follow-up message, the explanation, the sudden avalanche of, "You don't understand what I'm going through." But this time, she didn't pile on. I could have responded. Could have said, "About what?" Or, "Now's not a good time." But I didn't. Because I knew what she wanted. She wanted a soft opening. A foot in the door. A moment of hesitation to wedge open space for her version of events. Maybe even just the chance to say it wasn't really about the apartment, or that I'd taken it the wrong way. But there wasn't a wrong way to hear someone say, "You live like a rat." I locked my phone and went back to my sandwich. That night, I got home around 7. The apartment was warm. Darren had left the light on above the stove, and the quiet hum of life felt inviting, not empty. I sat at my desk and opened my window just a crack. The city outside was alive, but distant. Sirens in the background, somewhere far enough not to matter. I boiled water, dropped a lemon ginger tea bag into a mug, and leaned back. Then I scrolled up to her message again. Still unread. I didn't open it. Didn't need to. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something I hadn't expected, not pride, not anger, but peace. Because not all closure comes from a conversation. Sometimes it comes from not needing one. I didn't need her apology to feel better. I didn't need her understanding to validate my decision. And I sure as hell didn't need her back in my apartment, sipping lattes while rolling her eyes at the life I'd built. That night, I posted another photo. Not for her, just for me. The lights were glowing softly over the window. Darren had left out a small plate of cookies from the bakery near the train station. My tea was steeping in my favorite chipped mug. Caption: a little space. A lot of peace. No pests. No one tagged her. No one had to.